Welcome or welcome back to NEET. So today we'll be doing a very fast and quick revision of the chapter Evolution. Without any further ado, let's get started. Evolutionary biology is the study of, so what is evolution? Firstly, evolution is the change in life forms with time. Change in life forms with time is evolution. And what is the study of the history of life forms on Earth? It is called as evolutionary biology. Evolutionary biology is the study of life forms on Earth. What exactly is evolution? To understand the changes in flora and fauna that have occurred over millions of years, we must have an understanding. So, the study of history of life forms on Earth is called as evolutionary biology, and the change in life forms which has taken place over time is called as evolution. To understand the changes in flora and fauna that have occurred over millions of years on Earth, we must have an understanding of the context of origin of life. To understand the changes which have taken place in our plants and animals over millions and millions of Earth, we have to understand how life originated, how evolution of Earth, stars, and indeed the universe itself took place. So the origin of universe, the origin of life, the evolution of universe, evolution of life. What follows is the longest of all the constructed and conjectured stories. This is the story of origin of life and evolution of life forms or biodiversity on planet Earth in the context of evolution of Earth against the background of evolution of universe itself. So, evolution is the change in life forms which occurs with time, and evolutionary biology is the study of life forms on Earth. To understand the changes in flora and fauna which have occurred over millions of years on Earth, we have to have an understanding of the context of origin of life. That is the evolution of Earth, of stars, and of universe itself. What follows is the longest of all the construed and conjectured stories. This is the story of origin of life and evolution of life forms or biodiversity, that is the diversity of on planet Earth in the context of evolution of Earth and against the background of evolution of universe itself. What is the story that we are going to learn? It is the story of evolution of life and origin of life, and after that is evolution of life forms or biodiversity on planet Earth, and it is in the context of evolution of Earth and against the background of origin of life. When we look at the stars on a clear night sky, when we look at the stars on a clear night sky, we are in a way looking back in time. What does this mean? This means that the stars have formed way before and the light is reaching to us now. By the time the light reaches to us, the stars may have already been disappeared or destroyed. That is, the light reaches us after so many years, because the stars are light years away from us. Stellar distances are measured in light years. What we see today in an object whose emitted light started its journey millions of years back and from trillions of kilometers away, reaching our eyes now. When we see objects in our immediate surrounding, we see them instantly and hence in the present time. Therefore, when we see stars, we apparently are peeking into the past. That is, when they had first started shining, the light had not traveled to our eyes, but by the time the light traveled to our eyes after millions of years, that is, the star might have already lost its that is energy. That is, it would have uh, lost all the power of that is luminosity. The origin of life is considered a unique event in the history of universe. So origin of life is a unique event in the history of universe. Universe is vast, relatively speaking. The earth is itself a speck. The universe is very old, almost 20 billion years old. So when was the origin of universe? Origin of universe, it was 20 billion years ago. The origin of the universe was 20 billion years ago. Huge clusters of galaxies comprise of the universe. The galaxies contain stars and clouds of gas and dust. What do the galaxies contain? The galaxies contain stars and clouds of gas and dust. Considering the size of universe, Earth is indeed a speck, very small speck, point. The Big Bang theory attempts to explain to us the origin of universe. That is, the origin of universe was explained by which theory? That is the Big Bang theory. What does it say? It says that a singular huge explosion took place unimaginable in the physical terms. That is, there was a huge solid mass which with increasing temperature and pressure, that is, it burst and there was a very big explosion, and after this explosion, that is, the universe expanded and the temperature came down. Hydrogen and helium gases were formed after some time, and these gases condensed under gravitation to form galaxies which we see today. What is which galaxy are we? That is, Earth is in the solar system, and the solar system is of the Milky Way galaxy. What is Milky Way galaxy called in Hindi? It is called as Akash Ganga. Akash Ganga, or the Milky Way galaxy. Earth was supposed to have been formed 4.5 billion years ago. So origin of universe was 20 billion years ago. Origin of Earth was 4.5 billion years ago. There was no atmosphere on early Earth. The early Earth had was reducing. That is, it it was not oxidizing. That is okay. Firstly, though, there was no atmosphere on early Earth. Water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, and ammonia released from molten mass covered the surface. What are the gases that covered the surface? Water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, and ammonia, which was released from the molten mass, covered the surface. UV rays of the sun, because there was no ozone layer, the UV rays completely penetrated into our Earth's crust, and they broke up water into hydrogen and oxygen, and the lighter hydrogen escaped. Oxygen combined with ammonia and methane to form carbon dioxide and other molecules. The ozone layer was then formed. As it cooled, the water vapor fell as rain and filled all the depressions to form oceans. What kind of rain was this? This was your torrential rain, which did not stop, musladhar barish, or you say, pouring down, and basically it filled all the depressions to make the oceans that we see today. Life appeared 500 million years after the formation of Earth. When did life occur? It occurred 500 million years after the formation of Earth. So when was the origin of life roughly? Origin of life was 4 billion years ago. That is after 0.5 billion years or 500 million years of formation of Earth. That is 4 billion years back. Did life come from outer space? So first was the theory of that is, some scientists believe that it came from outside. Early Greek thinkers thought units of life, which were called as spores, they were transferred to different planets, including Earth. Panspermia is still a favorite idea for some astronomers. So this was the theory of panspermia. What did the theory of panspermia say? It said that the life it said that life came in the form of spores to Earth as well as other planets, and it came from outside, that is extraterrestrial, alien, and this theory is still valid today. It has not been discarded. It is also called as cosmozoic theory, theory of panspermia, or it is also called as cosmozoic theory, and it was given by Richard Helmholtz. For panspermia was by Arrhenius. Okay, so this one, that is Richard Helmholtz, and the term the spore and panspermia was given by Arrhenius. For a long time, it was also believed that life came out of decaying and rotting matter like straw, mud, etc. This was the theory of spontaneous generation. Theory of spontaneous generation or theory of abiogenesis. But Louis Pasteur, he that is discarded this theory by coming up with the theory of biogenesis. He said that life only comes from pre-existing life. How? That is Louis Pasteur, that is Operin and Haldane. Sorry, not Reddy's, Planzani and Louis Pasteur. Reddy's, Planzani and Louis Pasteur. Operin and Haldane are for chemical evolution. Firstly, Reddy's, Planzani and Louis Pasteur, they proved that life came from pre-existing life. What did Louis Pasteur do in pre-sterilized flask? He showed that life did not come from chilled yeast, while in another flask which was open to air, new living organism arose from the yeast. So therefore, something was coming from the air into the flask. It was not regenerating from the flask. So therefore, he discarded the or disproved the theory of abiogenesis with his theory of biogenesis. Spontaneous generation was dismissed once and for all. However, this did not answer how even though theory of biogenesis proved that life came from pre-existing life, that is vivum ex vivo, even though it omnis vivum ex vivo, even though it proved that life came from pre-existing life, still it could not prove how the first life form came on Earth. Operin of Russia and Haldane of England, they proposed that the first form of life could have come from pre-existing non-living organic molecules. For example, RNA and protein. That the formation of life was preceded by chemical evolution, that is formation of diverse organic molecules from inorganic constituents. So, Operin of Russia and Haldane of England proposed that the first life came from pre-existing non-living organic molecules. So, and these formation of diverse organic molecules came from inorganic constituents. So, the conditions were that in early Earth there was very high temperature, there were volcanic storms, reducing atmosphere, and they contained methane, CH4, ammonia, NH3. In 1953, S.L. Miller, who was an American scientist, created similar conditions in a laboratory, and he created an electric discharge in a closed flask containing methane, hydrogen and ammonia in 2:1:2 ratio and water vapor at 800 degrees Celsius, and he observed the formation of amino acids. In similar experiment, others observed formation of sugar, nitrogenous base, pigment and fats. So basically there had to be very high temperature, then the CH4, NH3 and H2, that is these had to be present in 2:1:2 concentration. Then there had to be torrential rain. And because of all this, and reducing atmosphere, that is no oxygen. So these all conditions were met by S.L. Miller's experiment, in which he took a closed flask, that is by a vacuum he removed the air. At the same time, that is, he boiled the water vapor at 800 degrees Celsius. Then he in the chamber he connected it to another gaseous chamber in which he kept methane, ammonia, and hydrogen in 2:1:2 ratio, and there he produced thunder. Here there had to be thunder also, thunder and lightning. So in early Earth, so he tried to produce thunder using electrodes, and then after that he let this experiment continuously run for 18 days, and after that he found that is, he saw that there was formation of amino acids in sugars and amino acid. He found amino acids, and later on similar experiments were made, and that is, they were for more and more time this experiment was left to run, and formation of sugar, nitrogenous base pigment, and fats took place. Analysis of meteoroid content also revealed similar compounds, indicating that the similar processes are occurring elsewhere in space. The analysis of meteoroid content also revealed that there are similar compounds, indicating that similar processes are occurring elsewhere in space. So this was the first way in which we found out that in chemical evolution, that is, the abiotic component, that is inorganic component, from there we would get organic component. That was right, but do we get first life from it? That is biotic. Abiotic part was correct. It was proved by S.L. Miller's experiment, and further it was proved because when we analyzed meteoroid content, then we got to know that there were similar compounds, indicating that such processes were happening elsewhere in the place, in elsewhere in space too. With this limited evidence, the first part of conjectured story, that is chemical evolution, was more or less accepted. We have no idea about how the first self-replicating metabolic capsule of life arose. So how self-replicating metabolic capsule of life arose, we don't know, but the first non-cellular forms of life could have originated 3 billion years back. When did the first non-cellular life forms originate? The non-cellular life forms originated 3 billion years back. They would have been giant molecules, RNA, protein, polysaccharides, etc. These capsules reproduce their molecules. Perhaps the first cellular form did not possibly originate till 2000 million years ago. These electrodes spark. You can see in this experiment by S.L. Miller, you can see in the vacuum pump, that is, the air is being pumped out so that there is no atmosphere, and then here the water is being boiled at 800 Kelvin. Then here the electrodes, that is thunder and lightning, is being produced. Spark discharge, gases, methane, ammonia, water, and hydrogen are being produced over here. We get, then here the condenser, that is cold water, is being used in, and then it condenses it like torrential rain. It is acting, and water is coming out. Then the water droplets, that is after condensation, the water droplets being formed, and later on after 18 days when we observe, then this water is containing organic compounds, amino acids. Liquid water in trap. So from here originally the liquid water was. These capsules reproduced their molecules. Perhaps the first cellular life form did not possibly originate about 2000 million years ago. So 2 billion years ago. So 3 billion years ago, first non-cellular form, then first cellular form, 2 billion years ago. These were probably single cells, and what were they? They were unicellular prokaryotes, and all life forms were in a water environment only. So the life forms first originated, they must have originated in water. This version of biogenesis, that is first form of life, arose slowly through evolutionary forces and from non-living molecules, and it is accepted by majority. However, once formed, how the first cellular forms of life could have evolved into the complex biodiversity of today is a fascinating story which will be discussed below. Once formed, how the first cellular forms of life could have evolved into complex biodiversity of today is a fascinating story which will be discussed below. Evolution of life forms, a theory. Conventional religious literature tells us about the theory of special creation. This theory has three connotations. So the theory of special creation, that is evolution of life form, is a theory. That is, first connotation was that all living organisms, species or types that we see today was, so firstly, that is Father Suarez. He gave us the theory of special creation, and this theory of special creation, that is, now we are coming to evolution of life forms. Evolution of life forms, all the theories. So first was theory of special creation, and this was moreover a very religious theory. That is, what is this really religious theory, and it was completely discarded. It had three connotations. The first connotation was that all living organisms, species or types which we see today were created as such. So all the living organisms which we see today, they were created as such, and that is, there was no evolution from inorganic to organic to unicellular prokaryote to unicellular eukaryote. All those things were not there. The second connotation was that the diversity was always the same since creation, and it will be the same in future also. This was so immediately discarded because diversity was that is, diversity earlier, the same diversity is there today. No, it has that is, it is not, the diversity is not always going to be same in the past as well as future present. It keeps changing, people keep evolving. Then earth is, and the third one was that the earth is 4,000 years old. So all these three connotations of theory of special creation given by Father Suarez were discarded, and all these ideas were strongly challenged during the 19th century based on observations made during a sea voyage in a sail ship called HMS Beagle round the world. Charles Darwin. So Charles Darwin did a sea voyage in which he sailed in a ship called as HMS Beagle around the world, and he concluded that existing life forms share similarities to varying degree not only among themselves but also with their life forms which existed million years ago. So Charles Darwin, he took a round trip, that is, he throughout the entire world, and he rode in a that is sea voyage round the world, and he rode in a ship called as HMS Beagle, and he observed all the life forms, living forms, and he concluded that all the existing life forms, they share similarities to varying degrees not only among themselves but also with the life forms which existed millions of years ago. That is, we have somewhere or the other, that is, our ancestors and ourselves, we are related. So many such life forms do not exist anymore. That is, there have been extinctions of different life forms in the years gone by, and new life forms have that is, new forms of life have arose at different periods of history of Earth. There has been gradual evolution of life forms. So the previous life forms such as dinosaurs and all, which do not exist anymore, they look very different than us. And there are so many animals and so many organisms which look very different from us, but that doesn't mean that we are completely different. We were created like this and they were created like that. No, somewhere or the other, they are our ancestors and we have evolved from them. There are similarities to varying degrees. So he said that the existing life forms, they have evolved from our ancestors, and we share varying that is, we are similar in varying degrees not only among ourselves but also with the life forms which existed millions of life forms do not exist anymore, and there had been extinctions of different life forms in the years gone by just as the new life forms arose in different periods of history. Any population has built-in variation characteristics, those characteristics which enable some to survive better in natural conditions, climate, food, physical factors, etc., would outbreed the others that are less endowed to survive under such natural conditions. This was a way of like saying survival of fittest. That is, That is, with time, as evolution have taken place, variations have come by. Why have these variations come by? That is, these inbuilt variations have come in organisms. That is, if you take a group of bacteria and you keep putting antibiotics, and they'll keep dying, but someday or the other, that is, one of them, some mutation will take place, some variation will take place, and one of them will survive, and it will become resistant to the antibiotic, and then it will multiply and replicate itself, and soon you will have over time, over years, you will see that the bacteria, that is, there is a species of bacteria, it is completely resistant to a particular antibiotic. Those characteristics which enable some to survive better in natural conditions, climate, food, physical practice, etc., it would outbreed others that are less endowed. So in such condition, that is, the one bacteria which was resistant to this antibiotic, and it was different. It all in that species of bacteria, when mixed with other species of bacteria, that is, it survived better in natural conditions, and therefore it outbred the others which were less endowed, and therefore a lot of other species of bacteria, they might have gone extinct to survive under such condition. Another word to use is fitness of the individual or population. Fitness, according to Darwin, refers ultimately and only to reproductive fitness. That is, fitness, survival of the fittest. Fitness was used by Darwin, that is, fitness of the individual or population. Fitness, according to Darwin, what did it refer to? It referred ultimately and only reproductive fitness. That is, uh, the variations which came by river. Those who are better fit in an environment leave more progeny than others. At the end of the day, no one, that is, you can't is going to be, that organism not going to be immortal. So ultimately, that is, better fit for the environment, it meant like progeny. The more and more you divide, the more and more progeny you'll have, more number of organisms you will have in your species, and they will dominate the others. These therefore will survive more, and hence they are selected by nature. He called it as natural selection and implied it as a mechanism of evolution. What did he call this? Survival of the fittest. That is, survival of the organisms which have variation, which can naturally survive in natural condition. They can outbreed others which are less endowed to survive. He called this natural selection and implied it as a mechanism of evolution. Let us also remember that Alfred Wallace, who was a naturalist, worked in Malay archipelago. This is very important. So Alfred Wallace was another naturalist who worked in Malay archipelago. He had also come to similar conclusions around the same time. In due course of time, apparently, new types of organisms are recognizable. All the existing, so along with Darwin, that is, Alfred Wallace was a naturalist who worked in Malay archipelago, and he also came to similar conclusions as Darwin at the same time. In due course of time, apparently, new type of organisms are recognizable. All the existing life forms share similarities, and they share common ancestors. These ancestors were present at different periods in history of the earth, that is, epoch, period, and eras. And the geological history of earth closely correlates with the biological history of earth. So the geological history of earth, geology, study of rocks and all, soil, history of earth, it closely correlates with biological history of earth. That is, all our ancestors, now they are extinct, but at some period in our earth they used to exist. So a common permissible conclusion is that earth is very old, not thousands of years as we thought earlier, but billions of years old. So if we, after listening to all these theories and all, we come to a conclusion, common permissible conclusion, that the earth is indeed very old. It is not just thousands of years old like we had thought, it is actually billions of years old. What are the evidences for evolution? Evidence that evolution of life forms has indeed taken place on earth has come from many quarters. Fossils are remains of hard parts of life form found in earth. So what are the evidences for evolution? How do we say that evolution has indeed occurred? Evidence that that evolution of life forms has indeed taken place on earth has come from many quarters. Firstly, it is fossils. Fossils, what are fossils? They are the remains of hard parts of life form found in earth. Hard parts, that is, they can be bones, they can be that is, teeth, your rocks. So they are found in rocks. Rocks form sediments, and a cross section of Earth's crust indicates the arrangement of sediments one over. So the remains of hard parts of life forms in layers of sedimentary layers of rock, sedimentary layers of rock, sedimentary layers of our Earth's crust, one over the other, that is the layers have been piled up during the long history of Earth. These hard parts of life forms, they are called as fossils, and they are the evidences for evolution. Different aged rock sediments contain fossils of different life forms who probably died during the formation of a particular sediment. So there are different ages, that therefore we said that the geological and biological history, that is both of them go hand in hand. How? That is different age rock, that is a rock which was formed in the Jurassic period, it will be having dinosaurs, that is the sedimentary layers of that rock will be having dinosaurs, and after that another layer, after that another layer. So this layer of rock, that is this bed of rock, when it will be formed, then it will be having organisms from that period. So some of them appear and which probably died during the formation of that particular layer of sediment. So some of them appear similar to modern organisms. They represent extinct organisms. For example, dinosaurs. A study of fossil in different sedimentary layers indicates the geological period in which they existed. So the study of fossils in the different sedimentary layers indicates the geological period in which they existed. The study showed that life forms varied over time, and certain life forms are restricted to certain geological time span. So what did this study show? That is the study of fossils in different sedimentary layers, which indicated the geological period in which they existed. This study showed that life forms varied over time, and certain life forms are restricted to certain geological time spans. This study showed us that life forms varied over time, and certain life forms were restricted to certain geological time spans. That is, after that they became extinct, they died, and then in the next geological time span, new forms of organism have arisen. So the new forms of life have arisen at different times in the history of Earth. All this is called as paleontological evidence. Paleontology. That is your study of dinosaurs and fossils. This paleontology, and all these are paleontological evidences. Do you remember how the ages of the fossils are calculated? Do you recollect the method of radioactive dating and principles behind the procedure? So there is carbon dating, in which you use the isotopes C14, C13, then radioactive dating, that is your C12 and C14. Carbon, for carbon dating, that is C12 and C14. C C12 and C14. C12 and C14 isotopes of carbon, that is C14 is a radioactive isotope which is unstable, and C12 is your stable isotope. And we know that that naturally occurring unstable radioactive isotopes, they decay over the course of time at a steady rate and produce non-radioactive isotopes of other elements. Therefore this steady rate of degradation, this is called as half-life. So your C14 keeps getting converted into C12. Why? Because C14 is extremely non-reactive, extremely reactive, that is radioactive, and it is unstable, whereas your C12 is stable isotope. So therefore with time it keeps changing, that is radioactive decay takes place, and this steady rate at which it keeps getting converted into a more stable isotope of its element is called as half-life of that radioactive isotope, usually given in the units of years. Taking into consideration this half-life of radioactive isotope, we can calculate the ratio of observed abundance of that radioactive isotope and its decay product in the fossil of rock we are studying. And this is called as radioactive dating. So what is radioactive dating? That is, let's say now if we find a lot of C12 and we find very less C14, then we can basically say that if we know that the half-life period, that is the time that takes for C14 isotope to get converted into C12, then with the amount of C12 found, we can find out the amount of C14 which was present and how much time it took for that C14 to get converted into the C12 that we find in the sedimentary layers, and this is called as radioactive dating. So radioactive decay of C14 took place. That's why C12 was formed, and this will give us a timeline. That is, how many years ago that sedimentary layer was formed, and by that we will know that how many years ago the organism or the life form which got extincted, and it was found in only that particular sedimentary layer, and how much time it lived, and at what time period its lifespan, and at what time period it was roaming Earth. Radioactive isotope, that is aside from carbon, potassium, uranium is also used. Half-life of carbon C14 is 5,730 years, which means every 5,730 years, half the C14 will decay back to N14. C14 can be used to determine the age of fossils up to 70,000 years old. And half-life of potassium 40 is 1.3 billion years, or 1.3 10 to the power 9 billion years. So this method is applicable for using old rocks. Embryological support for evolution. Embryological support for evolution, it was given by Ernst Haeckel. It was based upon the observation of certain features during embryonic stage which were common to all vertebrates. So in the embryonic stage, if you see in the diagram below, in this diagram is not given. There's a diagram in which all the embryos of all the animals in the first that is embryonic stage of all vertebrates, they look same, and there are certain features which are similar to all the vertebrates, but as they grow up then these features become absent in adults. For example, the embryos of all vertebrates including human develop a row of vestigial gill slit just behind the head, but it is functional only in fish and not found in any other adult vertebrates. So the embryos of all vertebrates have a row of vestigial gill slit. Even humans have a vestigial gill slit behind the head, but it is only functional in fish. In all other vertebrates, it disappears and it is not found in adult vertebrate. However, this proposal was disapproved on careful study performed by Carl Ernst von Baer. So Ernst Haeckel was the first to give embryological support for evolution. Embryological support for evolution was given by Ernst Haeckel, but this was disapproved by Carl Ernst von Baer. What did von Baer say? Von Baer noted that embryos never pass through the adult stages of other animals. So von Baer said that the embryos, they never pass through the adult stage of other animals. Comparative anatomy and morphology shows similarities and differences among organisms of today and those which existed years ago. Basically, Ernst Haeckel said that this embryo, that is, it had gill slits. Now for in adult it was not there, but in adult of fish this was there, which was present in human's embryo. So Carl Ernst von Baer said that embryos never pass through the adult stages of other animals. That is, that is something which was present in the embryo of human is present in the adult of fish. It can't be. That is, the embryos can never pass through the adult stages of other animals. Comparative anatomy and morphology show similarity and differences among organisms of today and that which were present years ago. That is, from a common ancestor, all of these arise. That is, Brachiosaurus, which was a herbivore and was very tall. It had a very long neck. It was not meat-eating. Then Tyrannosaurus, or as we see T-Rex, it had short legs, razor-sharp teeth, razor-sharp or dagger-like teeth, and it was very dangerous. Tyran, the word itself says, and was meat-eating. Triceratops, that is three-horned Triceratops. Then Stegosaurus, it had scales. Then Archaeopteryx is also called as missing link because it is supposed to be the direct ancestor of birds. Then
वो मार्क करने वाली हाँ वो है नहीं है
Crocodilon, Pteranodon, Crocodilian. Crocodiles are also that is uh, in your dinosaurs, there is direct ancestors, and Pteranodon, which was the flying dinosaur. So Brachiosaurus, Tyrannosaurus rex, Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Crocodilian, Archaeopteryx, Pteranodon. Such similarities can be interpreted to understand whether common ancestors were shared or not. Such similarities can be interpreted to understand whether common ancestors were shared or not. For example, whale, bat, cheetah, and human. All mammals share similarities in the pattern of bones of forelimbs. So what is this? This is homologous. That is, the origin is same but the function is different. So whale, bat, cheetah, and human. All mammals share similarities in the pattern of bones of forelimbs. For whale it is used for swimming, for bat it is used for flying, for cheetah it is used for running, for humans it is used for walking or locomotion movement, but uh, they all share similarities in pattern of bones. Though these forelimbs perform different functions, they have similar anatomical structure, and all of them have a humerus, radius, ulna, carpal, metacarpal, and phalanges. Humerus, your shoulder, then your radius, that is below your elbow, ulna, wrist, carpals, proceeding to metacarpals, your fingers, phalanges in their forelimbs. Hence, these animals, the same structure developed along different directions due to adaptations to different needs. In these animals, the same structure, it developed along different directions due to the adaptations to different needs. That is, one had to fly, one had to run, due to different needs. This is divergent evolution, and these structures are homologous. What is divergent evolution? That is, all of them have the same origin but they are diverging. They are having different function. That is called as divergent evolution. Homology indicates common ancestry. It means similar origin, same ancestor. That refers to homology. Other examples are vertebrate, hearts or brain. So all vertebrates, heart and brain, they they are all homologous. They originated, but they all have different functions. One is four chambered, one is three chambered, one is two chambered. In plants also, the thorn and tendrils of bougainvillea and cucurbita represent homology. Homology is based on divergent evolution, whereas analogy refers to a situation exactly opposite. The thorn of bougainvillea and the tendrils of cucurbita, both of them have different functions, but both of them are homologous to each other. Homology is based on divergent evolution, whereas analogy refers to situation exactly opposite. In homology, there is divergent evolution, that is common origin and different functions, whereas in analogy, it is the exact different. That is it has convergent evolution, that is all of them are having different origins but they all perform the same function. For example, wings of butterfly and the wings of birds, they both look alike. They are not anatomically similar structure, though they perform the same function. So the wings of butterfly and the wings of birds are very big, wings of butterfly are very small, and they are completely different anatomically, but they perform the same function, that is they help the organism to fly. Therefore, analogous structures are a result of convergent evolution. Different structures evolving for the same function and hence different structures evolving for the same function and hence having similarity. That is, there are different structures which are evolving for the same function and they have similarities. This is called as analogous or analogy. Other examples of analogy are the eye of octopus and the eye of mammals. The eye of octopus and eye of mammals has completely different origin and structure, but it performs the same function. That is, it is used for vision. flippers of penguin and flippers of dolphin. Both help in swimming, but both of them have different origin. One can say that it is similar habitat that has resulted in selection of similar adaptive features in different groups of organisms, but toward the same function. One can say that it is the similar habitat that has resulted in selection of similar adaptive features in different groups, or so one can say that the similar habitat of the organism has resulted in the selection of similar kind of adaptive features in different groups of organisms towards the same function. Because of the similar kind of habitat of penguin and dolphin, even though their anatomy and structure and origin was different, still both of them had to swim in order to survive, and penguin had to in order to eat food. Therefore, they adapted in a similar way towards the same function. Sweet potato is a root modification, whereas potato is a stem modification, but both of them are used for storage. Forelimb of man, forelimb of cheetah, forelimb of whale, and forelimb of bat all have different functions, but all of them have the same kind of bone structure in their forelimb. That is humerus, radius, ulna, metacarpal, carpal, phalange. So therefore, this is homology. All of them are homologous. The same line of argument, similarities in proteins and genes performing a given function among diverse organisms also gives clues to common ancestry. That is, similarities in proteins as well as genes performing a given function among diverse organisms gives us clues to common ancestry. So the proteins and genes in all different kind of organisms, they all perform the similar kind of function. So this also gives us a clue to common ancestry. These biochemical similarities point to shared ancestry as structural similarities among diverse organisms. So just like the structural similarities, the biochemical similarities point to the same shared ancestry as the structural similarities among diverse organisms. Man has bred selected plants and animals for agriculture, horticulture, sport, or security. Man has domesticated many wild animals and crops. This intensive breeding program has created breeds that differ from other breeds. Man has bred selected plants and animals for agriculture, that is hybridization, plant hybridization, horticulture, that is management of fruits and vegetables, sport, security, that is for amusement as well as for protection, and it has domesticated many wild animals and crops, and this intensive breeding program has created breeds which differ from other breeds. Example, dogs, but still are of the same group. Even though all the dogs are of the same group, still there are many breeds which completely differ from the other breeds. It is argued that within hundreds of years man can create new breeds, could not nature have done the same over millions of years? So if in 100 years man can create so many new breeds, then can nature do the same over millions of years? Another interesting observation supporting evolution by natural selection comes from England in a collection of moths made in 1850. The case study of natural selection in 1850, before the industrialization was set in, it was observed that there were more white-winged moths. That is, the name of the moth was Biston betullaria, and white-winged moths, and Biston carbonaria, dark-winged or melanized moths. Melanized because melanin, that is pigment present, so dark-winged or melanized moths. They were less, whereas white-winged moths were more. Why? Because the industrialization had not taken place, and therefore lichens were growing on the bark of trees, and lichens were white in color. Therefore, white-winged moths. The bird which used to predate on white-winged, used to predate on moths, could not notice or observe the white-winged moths because they used to get camouflaged due to the presence of white lichen, which is also white in color, on the bark of trees. Whereas the dark-winged or melanized moths, since they were darker shade, that is black in color, or dark, basically blackish brown, therefore they could be easily spotted by the bird and they got predated more. Therefore, their population was less before industrialization in the 1850s. But by the 1920s, In the collection carried out from the same area after industrialization, there were more dark-winged moths. Why? Because now the pollution increased due to industrialization, and since the pollution increased, we know that lichens can't grow in polluted areas. Therefore, the lichen population decreased, and due to this, the barks of trees, there was no lichen, and due to the industrialization and pollution, the barks of trees became black or dark in color. Therefore, now the dark moths were easily camouflaged and could not be seen by the bird, whereas the white-winged moths or Biston Betelluria could be easily seen by the bird, and they were predated more. Therefore, in 1920 there were more dark-winged moths, winged or Biston carbonaria or melanized moths as compared to white ones. The proportion got reversed. Melanized moth on a tree trunk, unpolluted area and polluted area. So the explanation put forth for this observation was that predators will spot a moth against a contrasting background. During post-industrialization period, the tree trunks became dark due to industrial smoke and soot. Under this condition, the white-winged moth did not survive due to predators, whereas dark-winged or melanized moth survived. Before industrialization had set in, thick growth of almost white-colored lichen covered the trees, and in the background, the white-winged moth survived, but the dark-winged moth, which could be seen because of the different background, that is contrasting color, were picked out by predators. Do you know that lichens can be used in industrial pollution indicators? Yes. Wherever lichen will not grow, that means the pollution level is high. Wherever lichen is growing, that means the pollution level is low. They will not grow in areas that are polluted. Hence, moths that were able to survive and camouflage themselves, that is hide in the background, survive. This understanding is supported by the fact that in areas where industrialization did not occur, for example in rural areas, the count of the melanic moths was low. So, that is, this understanding is supported by the fact that in areas where the industrialization did not occur, that is in your rural areas, the count of melanic moths was very low. Why? Because in rural areas the pollution is less. There is not much urbanization and industrialization. Therefore, since the pollution was less, the lichen were more, and since the lichen were more, the white-winged moths, that is on the bark of the tree, they grew on the they were on the lichen background. That is, they got camouflaged and they did not get predated, whereas the dark-winged or melanic moths did, and therefore in rural areas the melanic moth population was low. This showed that in a mixed population, those that can better adapt, survive and increase in population size. Remember that no variant is completely wiped out. So what did this show? This showed that in a mixed population, those which can better adapt and survive and increase in population size. So remember that no variant is completely wiped out. In this, the variant is not completely wiped out. It's just that the population, that is on a comparative basis, you can see the difference. That is directional. That is, the evolution is directional. Okay. Similarly, use of excess of herbicide, pesticide, etc. has only resulted in a selection of resistant varieties in a much lesser time scale. This is also true for microbes against which we employ antibiotics or drugs. So, because of excess use of herbicides and pesticides, this has only resulted in the natural selection of resistant varieties in a much lesser time scale. So, due to excessive use of weedicide and pesticide, the weeds and pests eventually they that is became resistant to it, and therefore now the resistant varieties, selection of resistant varieties took place. Why? Because the resistant weed is going to survive, whereas the non-resistant one kept dying. So we had learned before also in natural selection, that is, they outbred. The resistant ones outbred the non-resistant ones, and now the selection of resistant varieties with time took place in a much lesser time scale because of your increased use of pesticide and herbicide, and because of more population, urbanization, industrialization, that is more food demand and more economically. This is also true for microbes against which we employ antibiotics or drugs against eukaryotic organism or cell. So the same goes for antibiotics also, that is, or drugs against the eukaryotic organism or cell, that is all your bacteria, microbes and all pathogens. They also are slowly they were becoming resistant. Hence, resistant organism or cells appearing in time in a scale of months or years and not centuries. These are examples of evolution by anthropogenic action. Anthropogenic action, artificial selection. Natural selection was natural. In natural selection, over long period of time, that is naturally the ones that is the more species got selected, but because of your industrialization, herbicide, pesticide, antibiotics, that is by man-made evolution. Man-made evolution, also called as artificial evolution or artificial selection, also called as anthropogenic action. It is due to man, and this also tells us that evolution is not a directed process in the sense of determinism. It is a stochastic process based on chance events in nature and chance mutation in organism. That is, it is not a directional and directed process. Evolution, that is in evolution, it is not necessary that evolution is going to happen in a particular way, in a particular time, in a particular period. No, it can happen anytime, anywhere, in any amount of time. That is, it is very unpredictable. Basically, this line tells us that it is very unpredictable, and it is a chance event and mutation in organism. That is, any time in less than an hour, that is, in an organism, a mutation can occur and it leads to cancer, whereas a mutation can occur over a long period of time, also leading to something good or something bad in an entire species. Now, what is adaptive radiation? Such as in your COVID, there is so many variants are there. Why? Because it was continuously getting mutated. It was evolving. So it is not necessary that always evolution is going to take millions of years. It is a chance process. What is adaptive radiation? During his journey, that is, Darwin went to Galapagos Island. Darwin went to Galapagos Island. In Galapagos Island, he saw amazing diversity of creatures. Of particular interest were the small black birds. Later, he called them Darwin's finches. In Galapagos Island, when Darwin went during his journey, then he observed many small black birds, which he later on called Darwin finches. He realized that there were many varieties of finches on the same land. All the varieties, he conjectured, evolved on the island itself from the original seed-eating features. Many other formed altered beak from original seed-eating features. Many other forms with altered beaks arose, enabling them to become more insectivorous and vegetarian finches. So when he went to Galapagos Island, then in Galapagos Island, South America, he noticed that there were a lot of finches, and after close observation, he noticed that all these finches, that is black-eyed birds, they had all evolved from a common ancestor, but over time, that is original seed-eating birds, some became insectivorous, vegetarian, fruit-eating, depending, and their beaks also changed accordingly, altered beaks. This process of evolution of different species in a given geographical area, starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas of geography, that is habitats, is called as adaptive radiation. So this process of evolution of different species in given geographic area, starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas of geography, is called as adaptive radiation. What is adaptive radiation? Process of evolution of different species in a given geographic area, which started from a point and literally radiated to other areas of geography or habitat. So from a common ancestor, it radiated to form seed-eating as well as fruit-eating as well as insectivorous as well as vegetable-eating plants. Darwin's finches represent one of the best examples of this phenomenon. Another example is Australian marsupials. A number of marsupials, each different from other, evolved from an ancestral stock in the Australian island continent when more than one adaptive radiation appeared to have occurred in an isolated geographical area. Representing different habitat, one can call this convergent evolution. What is convergent evolution? That is Australian marsupials as well as placental mammals together underwent adaptive radiation similarly in a similar pattern. So they were evolved together. This is called as convergent evolution in the same geographical. area. Number of marsupials, each different from the other, evolved from an ancestral stock, but all within the Australian island continent, when more than one adaptive radiation appeared to have occurred in the same isolated geographical area. That is, in Australia, the marsupials also got radiated, adaptive radiation took place. That is, the ancestral marsupial formed Tasmanian wolf, tiger cat, banded anteater, marsupial rat, sugar glider, marsupial mole, koala, bandicoot, kangaroo, and wombat. At the same time, the placental mammals also formed mole, anteater, mouse, lemur, flying squirrel. It is in the same isolated geographical area of the Australian continent through adaptive radiation only, bobcat and wolf. Then together they got evolved and adaptive radiation took place in the same isolated geographical area. So this is called as convergent evolution. Placental mammals in Australia also exhibit adaptive radiation in evolving into varieties such as placental mammals, each of which appears to be similar to a corresponding marsupial. Placental wolf, example placental wolf and Tasmanian wolf. Mole, marsupial mole, mole, marsupial mole, anteater, numbat, which is also an anteater, mole, marsupial mole. Placental mole, marsupial mole. In placental mammals, that is anteater, numbat, which is also an anteater. Mouse, marsupial mouse. Lemur, spotted cuscus. Flying squirrel, flying philanger. Lemur, spotted cuscus. Lemur, spotted cuscus. Flying squirrel, flying phalange. Bobcat, Tasmanian tiger cat. Wolf, Tasmanian wolf. So here also in placental mammals there is a mole. In Australian marsupials there is placental mole. Here anteater is there. Here numbat is there. Numbat is also anteater. Numbat anteater. Mouse, marsupial mouse. Lemur, spotted cuscus. So one have to remember. Lemur, spotted cuscus. Flying squirrel, flying phalange, phalanger. Bobcat, Tasmanian tiger cat. Wolf, Tasmanian wolf. So lemur is spotted cuscus. Lemur, spotted cuscus. Anteater, numbat. Evolution by natural selection in a true sense would have started when cellular forms of life with differences in metabolic capacity originated on Earth. Evolution by natural selection in a true sense would have started when cellular forms of life with differences in metabolic capability originated on Earth. So evolution by natural selection in a true sense, it would have started when the cellular forms of life with differences in metabolic capability originated on Earth. The essence of Darwinian theory about evolution is natural selection. The rate of appearance of new forms is linked to the life cycle or the lifespan. The rate of appearance of new forms, that is evolution taking place over a period of time in life forms, it is linked to the life cycle or the lifespan. Microbes that divide fast have the ability to multiply and become millions of individuals within hours. A colony of bacteria, say A, growing on a given medium has a built-in variation in terms of ability to utilize a feed component. A change in the medium of composition would bring about only that part of population which can survive under the new conditions. So the rate of evolution or the rate of appearance of new life forms is directly linked with the life cycle or the lifespan. So microbes which divide fast, they have the ability to multiply and become millions of individuals within hours, whereas a colony of bacteria your battery is running low. चाहिए अभी ये चाहिए अभी रीड करिए इसमें से course of time, this variant population outgrows the others and appears as new species. This would happen within days. So, a colony of bacteria, say A, growing on a given medium has built-in variation in terms of ability to utilize a feed component. A change in the medium composition would bring about only that part of the population which has variation, which can survive under the new conditions. So in due course of time, this variant population is going to outgrow, that is naturally get selected, and the others and appear as a new species. This would happen within days. So for the same thing to happen in a fish or a fowl, it can take millions of years, as lifespan of these animals are in years. So for bacteria, the variation or the mutation can take place very fast, whereas for the same mutation to take place that has happened in a fish or a fowl, it will take millions of years, as lifespan of these animals are in years. Here we say that fitness of B is better than that of A under the new condition. Nature selects for fitness. Nature selects for fitness. Very important lines. One must remember that the so-called fitness is based on characteristics which are inherited. So what are these so-called fitness based on? They are based on the characteristics which are inherited. Hence, there must be a genetic basis for getting selected to evolve. So natural selection, why does natural selection occur? Natural selection occurs so that you can so that the species can keep surviving. If antibiotic resistant, that is if the bacteria would not have gotten mutated and would not have become resistant to antibiotics, then with time, that is that particular species of bacteria causing that disease would have become extinct. You would say that it's good now that they are pathogen, they cause diseases only, तो अच्छा होता अगर वो extinct हो जाते तो. But that is not the way. That is, there are so many good microbes also that we saw in microbes in human welfare. That is, so it is important. Natural selection is important, that is, variation with time is important, variation mutation with time is important, uh, uh, so that, and survival of the fittest is also important. And why does nature select for fitness? Why? One must remember that the so-called fitness is based on characteristics which are inherited, because that is to so that it can inherit, and in the further in the progeny, that is the resistant gene can keep going and it can keep surviving, and evolve. It keeps getting evolved so as to survive in and continue its progeny, keep reproducing. There must be a genetic basis for getting selected and to evolve. Another way of saying the same thing is that some organisms are better adapted to survive in an otherwise hostile environment. Adaptive ability is inherited. Adaptive ability is inherited. It has a genetic basis. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. These are so important lines. Nature selects for fitness. One must remember that the so-called fitness is based on characteristics which are inherited. Hence, there must be a genetic basis for getting selected and to evolve. Another way of saying the same thing is that some organisms are better adapted to survive in an otherwise hostile environment. There are some organisms which are adapted to survive in an otherwise hostile environment. Adaptive ability is inherited and it has a genetic basis. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. What is fitness? Fitness is the end result of the ability to get adapted and selected by nature. Adaptive ability is inherited and it has a genetic basis. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. Again, let's go through. Nature selects for fitness. One must remember that the so-called fitness is based on characteristics which are inherited. Hence, there must be a genetic basis for getting selected and for getting evolved. Another way of saying the same thing is that some organisms are better adapted to survive in extreme condition or hostile environment, and adaptive ability is inherited. Adaptive ability is inherited. Adaptive ability is inherited. So that is, so after on this basis only, Lamarck gives its theory, that is that that antibiotic resistance, that is inherited, that adaptive ability, that ability to adapt to a more hostile environment, it is inherited. That is, in the progeny is also going to have that. So therefore, it has a genetic basis. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt fitness is basically the end result. Why we are getting adapted? In order to, that is for the survival, for to be the fittest. And it is, so therefore fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. End में यही चाहिए. Branching descent and natural selection. So what were the two key concepts given by Darwin? That is branching descent, already it is bolded, and natural selection were the two concepts of Darwinian theory of evolution. That is, of Darwinian theory of evolution, the two key concepts were branching descent, adapt हो रहा है एक ही similar origin एक ही जगह से, such as your Darwin's finches and all, and natural selection, survival of the fittest. He saw in bacteria and all. So even before Darwin, a French naturalist, Lamarck, had said that evolution of life forms had occurred, but driven by use and disuse of organs. He gave example of giraffe, who in an attempt to forage leaves on tall trees had to adapt to elongation of their neck. So he said that earlier giraffes had very short neck, but because they had to adapt to forage on leaves and tall trees, they adapted, and because of this they elongated their neck. As they passed on this acquired character, he called it, in Lamarckian theory, he called it acquired character of elongated neck to their succeeding generation. Giraffes slowly over the years came to acquire long necks. Nobody believes this conjecture anymore. Is evolution a process or the result of a process? So is evolution itself a process, or it is the result of a process? The world we see in animate, that is not living, and one animate that is living, is only the success stories of evolution. When we describe the story of this world, we describe evolution as a process. So the world that we see is a success story of evolution. So is evolution a process or the result of a process? So the world we see inanimate and animate is the success story of evolution. When we describe the story of this world, we describe evolution as a process. When we describe the story of the world, then we see the then we describe evolution as a process. On the other hand, when we describe the story of life on earth, we treat evolution as a consequence of a process called as natural selection. So is evolution a process or is it a result of a process? The world we see inanimate and animate, that is the world that we see now, is the success story of evolution. So all the organisms and animals, those which have gotten naturally selected and over the years, they are success stories of evolution. When we describe the story of this world, then we describe evolution as a process. But when we describe the story of how this evolved to this evolved to this evolved to this, and finally this organism was formed that we see today and all others got extinct, then we describe evolution as a process. On the other hand, when we describe the story of life on earth, we treat evolution as a consequence of a process. That is the story of life on earth, we treat evolution as a consequence of a process which is called as natural selection. We are still not very clear whether to retard evolution and natural selection as processes or end result of unknown process. We are still not very clear whether to regard evolution and natural selection as processes or the end result of unknown processes. It is possible that the work of Thomas Malthus on population influenced Darwin. Darwin was influenced by whom? Darwin was influenced by Thomas Malthus on population, on his work on population. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. For example, natural resources are limited, populations are stable in size except for seasonal fluctuation, members of a population vary in characteristics. In fact, no two individuals are alike, even though they look superficially similar, most of the variations are inherited. Okay. So natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. Natural selection is based on certain observations, and these observations are factual. For example, what are the examples? Natural resources are limited. So Thomas Malthus said that natural resources are going to be limited, populations are stable in size except for seasonal fluctuation, members of a population vary in characteristics. In fact, no two individuals are alike, even though they look superficially similar, most of the variations are inherited. The fact that theoretically population size will grow exponentially even if everybody reproduced maximally If everybody reproduced maximally, this fact can be seen in a growing bacterial population, and the fact that population sizes in reality are limited means that there had been competition for resources. Only some survived and grew at the cost of others that could not flourish. The novelty and brilliant insight of Darwin was this. He asserted that variations which are heritable and make resource utilization better for few, adapted to habitat better, will enable only those to reproduce and leave more progeny. Hence, for a period of time, over many generations, survivors will leave more progeny, and there would be a change in population characteristic, and hence new forms appear to rise.
गई क्या? जा पढ़ाई कर. अरे बार बार पढ़ाई नहीं करते.
It is possible that the work of Thomas Malthus on populations influenced Darwin. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. For example, natural resources are limited, populations are stable in size. What are the facts on which natural selection is based on, which are factual? That is, natural resources are limited. Your resources, your food, water, everything, they are limited. Populations are stable in size except for seasonal fluctuation. So even though there is seasonal fluctuation is there, still the populations are mostly stable in size. It's not like in a year, in one season, all of a sudden so many people die, and all of a sudden so many people are born. Not like that. It is more or less, it is always going to be stable. Members of a population vary in characteristic. That is, in fact, no two individuals are alike, even though they look superficially similar. Most of the variations are inherited. So even though there is members of a population, there are 7 billion people, 7 billion people, but still they all look superficially similar. Most of the variations are inherited, even though they look superficially. In fact, no two individuals are alike, and even though they look superficially similar, no two characteristics are they vary in characteristics. Most of the variations are inherited, and all most of the variations that is in population, they are inherited. The fact that theoretically population size will grow exponentially if everybody reproduce maximally, the fact that theoretically population size will grow exponentially if everybody reproduce maximally, like we saw in bacterial population, and the fact that in reality population sizes are actually limited means that there is competition for resources. So if everybody reproduce maximally, then it will grow exponentially and resources will be limited, so it will lead to huge turmoil, right? But for so many years, even the population has expanded, and we have never reached that stage, or we are not, even if we will reach that stage in future, we are not reaching that stage fast enough. That is, more or less, there is a stability. Why is there stability there? Because there is a competition for resources. Only some survived and grew at the cost of others and could not flourish. So in a population, some survived, and the survived ones, they had variation and they grew at the cost of the others. That is, they had to compete with others, and others had to become extinct in order for them to grow and flourish. The novelty and brilliant insight of Darwin was this. He asserted that variations which are heritable. The brilliant insight of Darwin was this. What did Darwin say? Darwin said that he asserted that variations which are heritable and which make resource utilization better for few, which have adapted to the habitat better, will enable only those to reproduce and leave more progeny. Hence, over a period of time, over many generations, survivors will leave more progeny, and there would be a change in population characteristic, and hence new forms will appear to rise. So Darwin asserted that variations which are heritable, which make resource utilization better for few which have adapted to habitat, are the ones which will be able to reproduce and leave more progeny behind, and over a period of time, over many generations, the survivors will leave more progeny, and there would be a change in population, because the ones which had produced variations, uh, the ones which had produced variations, they that is, they survived, and the others die because they had variations, and then they reproduced, and they had their progeny, and then these all had the variations, and then they reproduced, and further after over many generations, the survivors will, that is, the survivors which were resistant, which had the variation or mutation, they will be the ones leaving more and more progeny, and so the survivors, and there will be a change in population characteristic. That is, this variation, it will become or mutation, it will become common to all, and new forms will start to appear and arise. Mechanism of evolution. What is the origin of this variation, and how does speciation occur? Even though Mendel had talked of inheritable factors or genes influencing phenotype, Darwin either ignored these observations or kept silence. In the first decade of 20th century, Hugo Revise, based on his work on evening primrose, brought forth the idea of mutations, large difference arising suddenly in a population. Even Even though Mendel had talked of inheritable factors or genes influencing phenotype, Darwin ignored these observations of Mendel or kept silence. In the first decade of 20th century, Hugo Revise, another scientist, based on his work on evening primrose, he brought forth the idea of mutations, that is, large difference arising suddenly in a population. Darwin talked about the mutations being small and directional or predictable, whereas Hugo de Vries gave completely different idea. That is, he termed as the idea of mutations which had a large difference and they arise suddenly in a population. He believed that it is a mutation which causes evolution and not minor variations heritable, which Darwin talked about. Mutations are random, they are directionless, whereas Darwin said that mutations were small and directional. Evolution for Darwin was gradual, while De Vries believed mutation caused speciation and hence called it saltation. What is the origin of this variation, and how does speciation occur? Even though Mendel had talked of inheritable factors or genes influencing phenotype, Darwin ignored these observations or kept silence. In the first decade of 20th century, Hugo de Vries. So the mutation theory is by the scientist Hugo de Vries. You have to remember that. So what is the origin of this variation, and how does speciation occur? So even though Mendel had talked about the inheritable factors influencing phenotype, that is factors genes, Darwin did not care about it. Darwin ignored these observations or kept silence. And in the first decade of 20th century, Hugo de Vries, based on his work on evening primrose is also called as Oino Oinothera lamarckiana. Primrose is also called as Oinothera lamarckiana. Brought forth the idea of mutations, large difference arising suddenly in a population. He believed that it is mutation which causes evolution and not minor variations which are heritable that Darwin had talked about. Mutations are random and directionless, while Darwinian variations are small and directional. So, so Darwin had said that the mutations are very small. The variations, he did not use the word mutation. Darwin said that the variations are small and directional, whereas Hugo de Vries said that the mutations are large, they are random, they are directionless. Evolution for Darwin was gradual, while de Vries believed that mutation caused speciation, and hence he called it saltation, single step large mutation. What is single step large mutation? Single step large mutation given by Hugo de Vries, single step large mutation, it is called as speciation. It is called as speciation. Studies in population genetics later brought out some clarity. Hardy-Weinberg principle. In a given population, one can find out the frequency of occurrence of alleles of a gene or a locus. This frequency is supposed to remain fixed and even remain the same through generation. Hardy-Weinberg principle started it using algebraic equations. Hardy-Weinberg principle. In a given population, one can find out the frequency of occurrence. So basically, what did Hardy-Weinberg principle talk about? He talked about occurrence of allele or gene, occurrence of allele or of a gene or a locus. What are the locus? That is in a chromosome, the points where the locus, plural loci, wherein gene was located. This frequency is supposed to remain fixed or even remain same throughout generations. So if we can find out the frequency of occurrence of a particular gene, so let's say black eye and Darwin finches, or in humans, let's say the brown eyeball color, that is the frequency of that gene or locus occurring in every generation. That is, if this frequency, what is the frequency of occurring it in that is 1 and 4, like that, it is supposed to remain fixed or remain the same throughout generation. Hardy-Weinberg principle stated this, that this frequency of occurrence of allele of a given gene or a locus has to remain fixed or same throughout generation. Hardy-Weinberg principles stated it using algebraic equation. The principle says that allele frequencies in a population are stable and constant from generation to generation. This principle says that allele frequencies in a given, that is in a population, are stable and constant from generation to generation. What does this principle say? Hardy-Weinberg principle. Hardy-Weinberg principle says that the allele frequencies in a population are stable and they are constant. That is, the allele frequencies in a population, they are going to be stable and constant from generation to generation. The gene pool or total genes and their alleles remains constant. The gene pool or total genes and their alleles in a population remains a constant. This is called as genetic equilibrium. So what did Hardy-Weinberg principle say? Hardy-Weinberg principle said that allele frequencies in a population are going to be stable and constant from one generation to other. That is, the allele frequency is the frequency of a allele, that is alleles of a gene or a locus occurring in a given population. They are going to be stable or same, constant from one generation to another, and the gene pool, that is total genes and their alleles in a population, they remain constant. This is called as genetic equilibrium. So the gene pool or total genes and their alleles in a population, the gene pool is going to remain constant, and this was called as genetic equilibrium. The gene pool is going to remains a constant. Gene pool remains a constant, and this is called as genetic equilibrium. Sum total of all allelic frequencies is 1. So he said that sum total of all allelic frequencies, let's take P and Q. That is, sum total of all allelic frequencies is going to be 1. So if we take P as allelic frequency of dominant, if we take P as the allelic frequency of dominant, that is dominant, and if we take Q as allelic frequency of recessive, then they are always going to be 1. The sum total of both of these is always going to be 1. Now for natural selection, that is number of individuals with phenotype favored by natural selection, and medium-sized individuals are favored. That is, in the middle, this is medium-sized individuals favored, and this is phenotypes, and these are showing phenotypes favored by natural selection, and this is the number of individuals with phenotype. So in that we have ABC. First is your stabilizing graph in natural selection. Stabilizing, that is always the average. Peak gets higher and narrower. So average or balancing or stabilizing, that is the height of individuals. Weight of, example is height of individuals. Then weight of newborn. It is always going to be That is, you will see that in a given class, in if you take number of students, then most of the people's heights in girls especially, and it is going to be between like 4 feet 8 inches to 5 feet 6 inches, between this range only. Whereas for boys it will be let's say like 5'3" or 5'4" to 6'1" or 6'2". So that is average. That is called as stabilizing or balancing, when average of our mean value gets selected. So in natural selection, always the average is getting selected. Then second one is directional, that is peak shifts to. Here example is industrial melanism. Industrial melanism. Then your bacteria wala. That is the one variant which is stable is getting selected, right? Over here also in industrial melanism, first the white moth got selected. That is, they were more, black was less. Then later on, black was more, and yeah, white was less, because and in both the cases, that is, the bird, the predator is basically bringing upon the natural selection. So peak shifts in one direction. That is, one variant is more. So here also for resistant bacteria, resistant pesticide, all of those, that is, the resistant one is surviving and it is outbreeding the other one, so it is directional. Then two peaks forming. That is, there is no average. It's either, that is, both superior ones. So both extreme variants. Over here there is one extreme variant, and peak shifts to one directional. In this, both the extreme variants are not there. Intermediate variant is there. Over here, intermediate variant is there. Whereas in the third one, this is, first one was stabilizing or balancing, natural selection. Then second one was directional. Third one is disruptive. There is no intermediate variant. No intermediate variant. What is the example of this? That is Bhutta. और kernels, either बहुत बड़ा होगा, either it will be very big or large, or it will be very small. No intermediate, no medium size. So now let's see Hardy-Weinberg, back to Hardy-Weinberg principle. So the sum total of all allele frequencies, that is dominant, recessive, should be 1, and individual frequencies, for example, can be named as P, Q, etc. in diploid P and Q. In diploid, P and Q represent the frequency of allele A, capital A, small a. The frequency of capital A individuals in a population is simply P square. This means, this is simply stated in another way. The probability that an allele A with a frequency of P appear on both the chromosomes of a, okay, so let's take PQ, that is dominant allele frequency, and recessive allele frequency. In a diploid, P and Q represent the frequency of allele A and capital A, small a. Okay, dominant, recessive. The frequency of capital A, in a population is simply P square. Square it, P square. So P square is the genotypic, that is dominant genotype of dominant. Genotype, we are taking AA allele, na? So genotype of dominant. Similarly, this is simply said in another way, probability that an allele A with frequency P appears on both chromosomes of a diploid individual is simply the product. What is P square? That is simply stated in another way, that is probability that an allele A with the frequency of P appears on both chromosomes of a diploid individual is simply the product of the probabilities. That is P square. Similarly, AAQ square, that is genotype of recessive, and of AA, that is, so P plus Q whole square, that is P square plus Q square plus 2PQ. Basic algebra, you know squaring, and this is equal to 1. Sum of all the frequencies is 1. So this is a binomial expansion, P plus Q square. When frequency measured differs from expected values, the difference, or Difference direction indicates the extent of evolutionary change. When frequency measured differs from expected value 1, then we see the extent of evolutionary change. Disturbance in genetic equilibrium or Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. What was genetic equilibrium or Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium? That is when the gene pool, that is the total number of genes and their alleles in a population, when it remains constant, that is genetic equilibrium or Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. When it was disturbed, that is change of frequency of alleles in a population would then be interpreted as resulting in evolution. Then the change of frequency of alleles in a population would then be interpreted as resulting in evolution. If we take an example that P is 0.8, tell me 2PQ. That is the allelic frequency of dominant is given. What is the allelic frequency of recessive? It will be 1 minus, because P plus Q is 1, right? So it will be 1 minus 0.8. So Q is going to be 0.2. And what is the genotype, dominant genotype? That is 0.8 ka square. So 0.64. Recessive ka genotype 2 to the 4. 0.04, and the genotypic frequency of, that is 2PQ, is called as genotypic frequency of heterozygous. That is genotype of heterozygous. What is the genotype of heterozygous? That is 0.8 into 0.2 into 2. So 8 to the 16, to the 32, so 0.32 is the answer. So such questions will come. Disturbance genetic equilibrium, that is change of frequency of alleles in a population, would then be interpreted as resulting in evolution. The change of frequency in alleles in a population will then be interpreted as resulting in evolution. 5 factors are known to affect Hardy-Weinberg principle. These are gene migration or gene flow. Gene migration or gene flow. That is अगर इमिग्रेशन हुआ, that is in Hardy-Weinberg principle यही बोलता है ना कि large pool होना चाहिए, that is random उसमें mutation होना चाहिए. It should not be selective, it should not be specific, it should not उसमें withdraw, ये सब कुछ नहीं होना चाहिए. So gene migration या gene flow अगर हुआ तो then it will affect Hardy-Weinberg principle. कोई जीन चला गया, माइग्रेट कर गया. Then genetic drift, by chance. जेनेटिक ड्रिफ्ट क्या था? बाय चांस वेरिएशन आने वाला हो, अगर बाय चांस हो गया देन ऑल्सो इट विल अफेक्ट हार्डी-विनबर्ग प्रिंसिपल. म्यूटेशन, सडनली रैंडम लार्ज नॉन डायरेक्शनल और डायरेक्शनलेस म्यूटेशन अगर आ गया देन इट विल अफेक्ट हार्डी-विनबर्ग प्रिंसिपल. जेनेटिक रिकॉम्बिनेशन, दैट इज instead of parental non-parental, that is recombinant type. Then also, and natural selection. In natural selection what will happen? That is more that is the characters will again get ये ना, that is the one ज़्यादा तो ये होगा उसमें उस पर डिपेंड करेगा लाइक कौन सा नेचुरली सिलेक्ट होके आ रहा है. विथ टाइम जो ज़्यादा ओवर आउटब्रीड कर जाएगा एंड वही फ्लरिश करेगा. तो यू कांट अफोर्ड, हार्डी-विनबर्ग प्रिंसिपल में यू कांट अफोर्ड द लॉस ऑफ अ स्पीशीज, यू कांट अफोर्ड लाइक द जीन माइग्रेशन और जीन फ्लो, दैट इज वो माइग्रेट कर रहा है, यू कांट अफोर्ड. बाई चांस कोई म्यूटेशन हो गया या वेरिएशन आ गया, रिकॉम्बिनेशन हो गया, इन सब से इट विल डिस्टर्ब योर जेनेटिक इक्विलिब्रियम या हार्डी-विनबर्ग इक्विलिब्रियम. एंड हार्डी that is, these are the all 5 factors. What are the 5 factors known to influence or disturb or affect Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium or genetic equilibrium? They are natural selection, recombination, genetic recombination, natural selection, genetic drift, then your gene flow or gene migration, and mutation. When migration of a section of population to another place of population occurs, gene frequencies change in the original as well as in the new population. So if migration occurs, then gene frequency will change, right? If example is Darwin finches, they moved to that is they moved to different parts and became new different species only. So change, gene frequency is also change in the original as well as the new population. That is originally also genes change हो जाएंगे and नए population में different gene आ जाएंगे. New gene और allele are added to new population and they are lost from old population. So there would be a gene flow if this gene migration happens multiple times. अगर multiple times ये हुआ तो gene flow हो जाएगा. And if the same change occurs by chance, अगर by chance ये हुआ तो that is by chance migration होके ये change हो गया multiple times, तो उसको genetic drift बोलेंगे. Sometimes change in an allele frequency is so different in the new sample of population that they become a different species itself. The original drifted population becomes founder and the effect is called as founder effect. So what is genetic drift, gene flow, gene migration, founder's effect? When migration of a section of population to another place or population occurs, then the gene frequencies change in the original as well as in the new population. The gene frequencies will change in the original as well as in the new population. New genes or alleles are added to the new population and अचानक से उनका माइग्रेशन हो गया तो जीन फ्लो होना चालू हो जाएगा देन, क्योंकि नए नए जीन्स या नए म्यूटेशन वेरिएशन आ जाएंगे, दोनों के दोनों अलग अडाप्ट अलग से होने लगेंगे अलग एनवायरनमेंट में, एंड नए जीन्स के एलील्स जो है वो नए पॉपुलेशन में फॉर्म होंगे एंड दे विल गेट लॉस्ट फ्रॉम दी ओल्ड पॉपुलेशन. सो देयर विल बी जीन फ्लो इफ दिस जीन माइग्रेशन हैपेंस मल्टीपल टाइम्स, बट इफ द सेम चेंज अकर्स बाय चांस ऑल ऑफ अ सडन, then it is called as genetic drift. Sometimes the change in the allele frequency is so different in the new sample of the population that अचानक से अगर एक species है जो दो में डिवाइड हो गए, अचानक से ऐसा वेरिएशन आया एक species में, वो change आया that it is so different or so unpredictable that the new sample of population that they become a different species only. वो same species था but वो अभी separate हो गया, जीन माइग्रेशन हो गया, जीन फ्लो हुआ, जेनेटिक ड्रिफ्ट हुआ, उसके बाद ऐसा एक वेरिएशन आया स्पीशीज में, इतना भयंकर वेरिएशन था कि दोनों के दोनों अलग स्पीशीज ही बन गए. So the original drifted population becomes the founders and this effect is called as founders effect. So the original population जो जहाँ से ये गया था ये करने के लिए, the original population it becomes the founder and this is called as founders effect. Microbial experiments show that pre-existing advantageous mutations when selected result in observation of new phenotypes. Microbial experiments show that pre-existing advantageous mutations when selected, pre-existing advantageous mutation अगर होगा, then when selected they will result in observation of new phenotypes over few generations. This will result in speciation. Natural selection is a process in which heritable variation enabling better survival are unable to reproduce and leave greater number of progeny. So natural selection में क्या होता है कि better survival होता है and leave a greater number of progeny. Critical analysis makes us believe that variation due to mutation or variation due to recombination during gametogenesis or due to gene flow or genetic drift result in change frequency of gene and allele in future generation. इसीलिए हार्डी मीन पर इक्विलिब्रियम पे डिपेंड करता है. Critical analysis makes us believe that variation अगर mutation की वजह से हुआ या फिर recombination की वजह से हुआ during gamete formation या फिर genetic flow, gene flow या फिर genetic drift की वजह से हुआ, then it results in change frequency of genes, that is the frequency of genes change and alleles in future generation change हो जाते हैं. Coupled to enhance reproductive success, natural selection makes it look like a different population. Coupled to enhance reproductive success, natural selection makes it look like a different population. Natural selection can lead to stabilization in which more individuals acquire mean character value, directional change, more individuals acquire value other than mean character value, or disruption, that is more individuals acquire peripheral character value at both ends of the distribution curve. So natural selection can lead to either stabilization हो सकता है, stabilization या फिर balancing हो सकता है, in which more individuals acquire mean character value, दोनों के बीच का mean या average character value, that is we saw in the height of all of us, height of individuals as well as in the weight of newborn babies. या फिर directional change हो सकता है, that is more individuals acquire value other than the mean character value. average के अलावा कोई एक value पे सारे के सारे दो value थे तो all went to one value, that is directional. एक एक्सट्रीम वेरिएंट या सुपीरियर वेरिएंट पे मीन कैरेक्टर वैल्यू नहीं, एवरेज नहीं, किसी एक दो एक्सट्रीम वेरिएंट में से कोई एक एक्सट्रीम वेरिएंट डायरेक्शनल, और डिसरप्शन, दैट इज मोर इंडिविजुअल, दैट इज पेरिफेरल कैरेक्टर वैल्यू, कोई ये भी एंड ये भी दोनों भी, बट उसका बीच का मीन नहीं होगा, एवरेज नहीं होगा, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज डिस्ट्रक्टिव ग्राफ और कर्व. और ब्रीफ अकाउंट ऑफ एवोल्यूशन. About 2000 million years ago, the first cellular, so 2 billion years ago the first cellular forms, and 3 billion years ago first non-cellular form appear हुए अर्थ में. The mechanism of how non-cellular aggregates of giant macromolecule could evolve into cells with membrane envelope is not known. कैसे non-cellular aggregate of giant macromolecule वो cells of membranous envelope कैसे बन गए पता नहीं. Some of the cells had ability to release oxygen, that is autotrophs. Photosynthetic. The reaction could have been similar to the light reaction in photosynthesis, where water is split with the help of solar energy captured and channelized by appropriate light harvesting pigments. Slowly single-celled organism became multicellular. तो सबसे पहले single celled आए, multicellular बने. By the time that is 500 million years ago, invertebrates were formed. So 500 million years ago, invertebrates. So 3 billion years ago non-cellular form आए, 2 billion years ago cellular form आए, 500 million years ago invertebrates आए पहली बार. फिर and active jawless fish probably formed around 350 million years ago, और 350 million years ago jawless fish आए, jawless fish आए. So 500 million years ago invertebrates आए, 350 million years ago jawless fish आए, और seaweeds and few plants existed probably. और 320 million years ago seaweeds and few plants existed. We are told that first organisms that invaded the land were plants. सबसे पहले ऑर्गेनिजम्स कहाँ पे मिले थे? वाटर में. एंड सबसे पहले जो ऑर्गेनिजम्स लैंड पे इन्वेड किए थे, दे वर प्लांट्स. दे वर वाइड स्प्रेड ऑन लैंड व्हेन एनिमल्स इन्वेडेड लैंड. जब तक एनिमल्स इन्वेडेड लैंड, टिल देन दे वर वाइड स्प्रेड. फिश विद स्टाउट एंड स्ट्रॉन्ग फिन्स कुड मूव ऑन लैंड एंड गो बैक टू वाटर. फिशेस में स्टाउट्स होते थे जो कि स्ट्रॉन्ग फिन्स होते थे, जो कि लैंड पे आ सकते थे, फिर वापस वाटर में जा सकते थे. दिस वाज अबाउट 350 मिलियन ईयर्स अगो. तो जब जॉलेस फिशेस थे तभी स्टाउट भी था, स्टाउट फिशेस भी थे जिनके पास बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग फिन्स था, एंड दे कुड कम टू लैंड एंड देन दे कुड गो बैक टू वाटर. In 1938, a fish caught in South Africa happened to be coelacanth, which was thought to be extinct. तो 1838 में एक फिश साउथ अफ्रीका में मिला था. इट वाज सीलोकांथ, जो कि which was thought to be extinct. These animals called lobe fins evolved into the first amphibians that lived on both land and water. There are no specimens of these left with us. However, these were ancestors of modern day frogs and salamanders. Okay, so now first let's go back to this. So our first, just like BGA or blue green algae or cyanobacteria, our first ancestors were chlorophyte ancestors. From chlorophyte ancestors, trichophyte ancestors. From trichophyte ancestors, Rhinia type, and then xylophyton. So now chlorophyte ancestors directly आगे जाके कार्बोनिफेरस में this is where evolution occurs. These type of, this means evolution has occurred. So they became bryophytes. So bryophytes are direct ancestors of chlorophytes. Bryophytes are direct ancestors of chlorophytes. And when did chlorophyte evolve to form bryophyte? In Carboniferous period of Paleozoic. Carboniferous में chlorophyte bryophyte में change हो गए. Direct bryophytes are direct ancestors of chlorophytes. Bryophytes are direct ancestors of chlorophytes. Then ट्रेकियोफाइट, पहले जोस्टेरोफाइलम इवॉल्व हुआ, फिर आर्बोरेसेंट लाइकोपोड्स में इवॉल्व हुआ जो कि एक्सटिंक्ट हो गए. उसके बाद हर्बेशियस लाइकोपोड्स जो अभी प्रेजेंट है जुरासिक में, हर्बेशियस ब्रायोफाइट. नाउ सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है साइलोफाइटन. दैट इज सबसे पहले प्रोजिम्नोस्पर्म, फिर सीड फर्न से साइकैड्स, वहाँ से डाइकोटिलेडॉन्स और एंड सीड फर्न से डाइकोटिलेडॉन, मोनोकोटिलेडॉन और साइकैड्स. So monocotyledons and dicotyledons are direct ancestors, and cycads, all three of them are direct ancestors of seed ferns, which are direct ancestors of progymnosperm, जो कि आए हैं साइलोफाइटन से. साइलोफाइटन से ग्नेटाल्स, कॉनिफर्स, जिंको, फर्न और स्पिनॉप्सिड्स और हॉर्सटेल्स आया है। सो साइलोफाइटन से क्या क्या आया है? स्पिनॉप्सिड, फर्न, जिंको, कॉनिफर, ग्नेटाल सब आया है, एक्सेप्ट फॉर याद रखने के लिए क्या है? साइकैड्स, डाइकोटिलेडोनस, मोनोकोटिलेडोनस फ्लावरिंग प्लांट, दैट इज एंजियोस्पर्म्स, सीड फॉर्म्स, प्रोजिम्नोस्पर्म। सो साइलोफाइटन से इवोल्यूशन होके प्रोजिम्नोस्पर्म बने, प्रोजिम्नोस्पर्म से इवोल्यूशन होके सीड फॉर्म्स बने, सीड फॉर्म्स इवोल्यूशन होके साइकैड्स बने और मोनोकोटिलेडॉन, डाइकोटिलेडॉन, दैट इज एंजियोस्पर्म्स बने। एंड साइलोफाइटन से और क्या क्या बना था एक्सेप्ट फॉर प्रोजिम्नोस्पर्म? दैट इज ग्लिटाल, कॉनिफर्स, जिंको, फर्न, स्पिनॉप्सिड, सारे के सारे। एंड राइनिया से कुछ भी नहीं है, राइनिया टाइप से कुछ भी नहीं है। ट्रिकोफाइट एंसेस्टर्स से एबोरोसेंट लाइकोपोड्स हैं जो कि पर्मियन में एक्सटिंक्ट हो गए। व्हेन डिड एबोरोसेंट लाइकोपोड्स बिकम एक्सटिंक्ट? पर्मियन में। एंड व्हेन डिड हर्बेशियस लाइकोपोड्स इवोल्यूशन कब हुआ? जुरासिक पीरियड में। 320 मिलियन ईयर्स अगो 1938 में फिश कॉट इन साउथ अफ्रीका स्टीलोकान था जो कि सोचा था कि एक्सटिंक्ट हो गया, बट ये भी था अभी भी। And seaweeds and few plants existed probably around 320 million years ago. And stout fishes जो कि लैंड पे आ सकती थी स्ट्रॉन्ग फिन के साथ और वापस वाटर में रिपीट कर सकती थी, they were 350 million years ago. Early reptiles extinct from their synapsids and sauropsids. Sauropsids, turtles directly sauropsids से बने हैं। Then साइनाप्सिड से पेलिकोसॉरस बना जो कि एक्सटिंक्ट हो चुका है। पेलिकोसॉरस से थेराप्सिड्स बना एंड थेराप्सिड्स से मैमल्स बने। सो मैमल्स डायरेक्टली किससे बने हैं? थेराप्सिड से। डायरेक्ट एंसेस्टर्स थेराप्सिड्स। कब? जुरासिक पीरियड में। डायरेक्ट एंसेस्टर्स ऑफ थेराप्सिड्स। नाउ सौरोप्सिड्स, थीकोडॉन्ट्स, थीकोडॉन्ट्स से डायनासोर्स बने जो एक्सटिंक्ट हो गए। अच्छा नहीं, सॉरी, वी आर डायरेक्ट एंसेस्टर्स ऑफ पेलिकोसॉरस, डायरेक्ट एंसेस्टर्स ऑफ पेलिकोसॉरस। Yeah, we are direct ancestors of Pelicosaurus. I'm so sorry. We are direct ancestors of Pelicosaurus. So synapsid से Pelicosaurus बने, Pelicosaurus से mammals बने, डायरेक्ट खत्म। Sauropsid से Thecodont बने, Thecodont से थीकोडॉन्ट से थेराप्सिड बने, थीकोडॉन्ट से डायनासोर्स बने और थेराप्सिड बने, दोनों भी एक्सटिंक्ट हो गए और थीकोडॉन्ट से डायरेक्टली क्रोकोडाइल्स बने। और थेराप्सिड से डायरेक्टली बर्ड्स बने। देन सौरोप्सिड से डायरेक्टली टर्टल बने, फिर लिजर्ड्स बने, टॉर्टरस बने, स्नेक्स बने, सब बने सौराप्सिड से। और सौराप्सिड और साइनाप्सिड अर्ली रेप्टाइल से बने थे जो एक्सटिंक्ट हो चुके हैं। These animals called lobe fins. Coelacanth, ये जो animals थे इनको lobe fins बोला गया था. These lobe fins they evolved into first amphibians. So these lobe fins they evolved into first amphibians. And they lived both on land and in water. There are no specimens of these left with us. However, these were the modern day frog and salamander. These were the ancestors of modern day frog and salamander, and amphibians evolved into reptiles. They lay thick-shelled eggs which do not dry up in sun, unlike those of amphibians. Reptiles और amphibians में difference क्या है? They lay thick shelled eggs which do not dry up in sun, unlike those of amphibians. Amphibians के जो eggs होते थे they dried up in sun, whereas reptile के जो egg होते हैं वो thick shelled होते हैं and they do not dry up in sun. Again we only see modern day descendants, turtle, tortoise and crocodile. In the next 200 millions or so, reptiles of different shapes and sizes dominated the earth. Giant ferns, pteridophytes were present, but they all fell to form coal deposits slowly. Acha, giant ferns, pteridophytes were present, but uh, uh, fell to form coal deposits. Some of these land reptiles went back to water to evolve into fish-like reptiles, probably 200 million years ago, जैसे कि Ichthyosaurus, Ichthyo, Ichthyosaurus, Ichthyosaurs. Okay. Some of these land reptiles they went back to water and to evolve into fish-like reptiles. The land reptiles were of course the dinosaurs. Biggest of them was Tyrannosaurus rex, जो कि 20 feet high था, dagger-like teeth था. 65 million years ago, dinosaurs suddenly disappeared from the earth. We do not know the true reason. Some say climatic changes killed them. Some say most of them evolved into birds. But the truth may live in between. Small-sized reptiles of that era still exist today. First mammals were like shrews. Their fossils are small sized. Mammals were viviparous, protected their unborn young inside their mother's body. Mammals were more intelligent in sensing and avoiding danger at least. When reptiles came down, mammals took over this earth. There were South America mammals resembling horse, hippopotamus, bear, rabbit, etc. Due to continental drift, when South America joined North America, these mammals were overridden by North American fauna. Due to same continental drift, pouched mammals of Australia survived because of lack of competition from other mammals. Pouched mammals in Australia survived because of lack of competition from any other mammal. Lest we forget, some mammals live wholly in water. Whale, dolphin, sea cow, seals. Evolution of horse, elephant, dog, etc. are special stories of evolution. You will learn about them in higher classes. The most successful story is the evolution of man with language, skill and self-consciousness. A rough sketch of the evolution of life forms and everything उधर दिया हमने देख लिया. Now, origin and evolution of man. About 15 million years ago, Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus were existing. सबसे पहले था Dryopithecus. Hairy Dryopithecus was more like ape-like, and Dryopithecus और Ramapithecus दोनों के दोनों hairy थे. They walk like gorillas and chimpanzees. जैसे गोरिल्ला और चिंपांजी चलते हैं वैसे ही Dryopithecus और Ramapithecus चलते थे. They were hairy. Ramapithecus was more man-like. Dryopithecus was more ape-like. Ramapithecus जो था वो बहुत ज़्यादा man-like था. Rama that was found in Shivalik Hills, India में पहला. Therefore, Ramapithecus and Dryopithecus more ape-like था. Few fossils of man-like bones have been discovered in Ethiopia and Tanzania. These revealed hominid features, leading to the belief that about 3 to 4 million years ago, man-like primates walked in Eastern Africa. 3 to 4 million years ago, man-like primates walked in Eastern Africa. They were not taller than 4 feet, but walked upright. कौन सबसे पहले walked upright? 2 million years ago, Australopithecines probably lived in East African grasslands. Evidence showed that they hunted with stone weapons. They essentially ate fruit. Meat नहीं खाते थे. Some of the bones among the bones discovered were different. The creature was first human being-like, was hominid. Being the hominid was Homo habilis. सबसे पहले Dryopithecus, Ramapithecus. After Dryopithecus, Ramapithecus is Australopithecus, जो कि they could stand upright. They were more man-like. They East African grasslands में पाए जाते थे. Man-like primates थे 3 to 4 million years ago. 4 feet tall थे, about 4 feet. और stone weapons बनाए थे. That is, they hunted with stone weapons. सबसे पहले stone weapon किसने बनाए थे? Australopithecus. But essentially they used to eat fruit. Meat नहीं खाते थे. The bones were discovered were different. This creature called first human being like creature, hominid. The hominid कौन था? Homo habilis. The brain capacities of Homo habilis was 650 to 800 cc. They did not eat meat, and fossils were discovered in Java in 1891. Homo erectus 1.5 million years ago. Homo erectus a 900 cc का brain capacity था. 650 to 800 capacity का Homo habilis का था. 900 का Homo erectus का था. Comparison of skull of modern day human being, baby chimpanzee and adult chimpanzee. तो बेबी चिंपांजी का जो स्कल है वो ह्यूमन चिंपांजी से ज़्यादा मिलता है, सॉरी ह्यूमन जो अडल्ट ह्यूमन से ज़्यादा मिलता है। ये अडल्ट ह्यूमन का स्कल है और ये बेबी चिंपांजी का स्कल है, बहुत ज़्यादा मिलता है। अडल्ट चिंपांजी का नहीं मिलता है ह्यूमन के साथ। होमो इरेक्टस 8 मीट, तो सबसे पहले पहले मीट खाने वाले कौन से थे? होमो इरेक्टस। उसके बाद नियांडरथल मैन विद अ ब्रेन साइज ऑफ 1400 cc lived in Near East and Central Asia between 1 lakh to 40,000 years back. They used hide to protect their body and buried their dead. सबसे पहले किसने अपने आप को हाइड मतलब प्लांट और एनिमल